Welcome to another episode of the Minorities Report podcast. I'm Antonio Alcazar.
And I'm Jason, slaughtered like a bull tech.
What a scene, too. Jeez.
Ooh, it's a scene. Yo, and here we are. We're coming back at you. It's another week, so it's another movie, baby.
Well, 2 weeks. We do them every 2 weeks.
That's true. Our other show is weekly, so I got a little bit twisted up there.
You got excited.
But we brought you a special for all you lovers out there. Valentine's Day just passed, and boom, bam, bing, we're doing Apocalypse Now. There's probably not a better...
romance movie.
Romance movie.
Yes,
That's what I
right.
would say.
Yeah. This is probably the most romantic movie I've ever seen.
It's definitely a romantic film. It gets down in your stomach and just makes your heart feel great. And for the love that you have for the people around you.
I like how people can instantly tell how different this movie is from the one that we did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Just from how much fun we're having this one.
For sure.
The other one I was nervous about talking about it.
Yeah.
This one I'm just like, okay, well, let's talk
because
about
I told you the difference was that movie was much more like a realistic, deep take
Let me show
on the
you what
psychology.
war is like.
Now, here's the thing. This movie deals a lot with psychology, but it's an adventure movie, really, is what it is.
This definitely had more of like a narrative.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So what we're doing here
The other one was more of a character study. This one was
absolutely,
more of a narrative. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is 1979's undisputed hit, Apocalypse Now. We're not going to beat around the bush. Brought to you by Francis Ford Coppola. I'm sure you know the guy. You love the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously the two Godfather films.
Yeah, for sure.
Two movies that I love those. Or, I'm sorry, he did all three Godfather films. Yeah. We care about two of them. Then he did two movies.
The third one, have you ever seen the third one?
Yeah, I have. It's trash as fuck, man. Yeah. I hate the word trash, and I still put the word trash.
I wouldn't say it's trash, but it definitely is not up to par with 1 and 2. You know?
It's hard, right? Because 1 and 2 are considered like some of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and then
and earn it.
Right, yeah. I agree completely. And then two other movies that I enjoy that are kind of sideline movies, The Outsider and Rumblefish. Mm-hmm. I read those books when I was a kid, and I remember seeing the movies, and I liked them. I didn't know he was even involved in these until later on. And then he was also involved in Bram Stoker's Dracula, another film that I love.
Did he make that movie?
I don't remember if he made it.
Oh, by the way, that's another movie I haven't seen. So.
What, Dracula? It's on the docket for Halloween at time.
Sure,
We'll do it for the Halloween time period.
I wouldn't mind watching good Halloween movies this year.
Yeah, it's definitely a up the similar type of alley. Instead of the classics like Halloween. I mean,
wait, this is the one with Keanu Reeves, right?
Yeah, Keanu Reeves.
Was this one panned? Like it was just like this is not. Right.
So it's very much like one of those movies where I think at the time people didn't love it, but with time it really caught ground and people really started to enjoy it because there's a lot of good in that film. And I mean, like Gary Oldman as Dracula is phenomenal. I've used that gif of him laughing so many fucking times. With people.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
I really enjoy it. So to get into this movie, like I said, we all know Francis Ford Coppola. We all love him. So let's just jump right into the film. Okay. Starts off with a very 1970s style shot. It's over a minute long of just looking at the jungle, and slowly the music starts to play to like bring you into this film.
Yeah, great song by the way. Yeah, The End by the Doors.
Yeah, absolutely,
phenomenal song.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the musical choices in this film.
Crazy song. Like that song is kind of maddening. Mm-hmm. Like there's a point in the middle of the song because they didn't show this in the movie because they only put like the more musical part of the song.
Yeah,
but in the song there's like this long. I think the majority of the song is Jim Morrison just kind of like ranting wild shit for a while.
Yeah.
And like that song has a very like crazy making kind of maddening feel to it. And it's trying to tell you what mentality our main character is
absolutely
in. But you know what? He's not really in that mentality. In the movie.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Like at the beginning, he seemed fucking unhinged, and then the rest of the movie he's just like a regular dude. There's nothing unhinged about him the rest of the movie.
So I thought that so it's going to be interesting talking about this film because I haven't seen this movie in probably 15 years.
Oh wow.
And I remember seeing this movie and thinking one way, and then rewatching it I was like, I'm so much more well versed in film and things like that now at this point in my life. Yeah. So like I watched it completely different, and we'll get into all the different stuff like that.
So they show him on his bed.
So yeah, we get napalming of the forest. I want to point this out too, like because Francis Ford Coppola, as time went on, things changed, but this is when he was in his shit, right? This was like Godfather type of year because this movie started being created in the 70s, early 70s, right? Okay,
Godfather was 71.
I think that I can't remember exactly.
Yeah,
check Godfather 1 and 2.
The Godfather came out in 72.
Okay.
Godfather 2 came out in 74.
Okay, so this is like right in between that he was making this movie.
Yeah,
this came out in 79, but he started working on this in 71.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Well, that's because this. It's not like nowadays. Nowadays, a movie gets like started and then it's out the next year.
Yeah, photography is over in 6 months.
Right.
Yeah.
In the 70s and like 60s, movies took time. A lot of movies took years to be made and then put out, especially something on this caliber.
Yeah, this definitely felt like the scale was insane.
Yeah.
Like when I was watching,
we'll get into all of that.
How much money did they fucking
spend?
Yeah,
buddy. It fades in from that napalming of the forest into Martin Sheen's face and like him in Saigon just completely tripping out.
I didn't know, by the way, who was going to be in this movie.
Sure.
You know, I never do any research going into these movies. And when I saw the youngest Martin, it was like Martin Sheen was born 2 days before they started. Like, that's how young that dude was.
Man.
I'm like, holy, because like, you know, I'm in my 30s, so like I've only ever known Martin Sheen as like this old dude.
Right.
And like seeing him this fucking young was insane.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's some other characters too that we can get into.
I grew up with him on West Wing.
Yeah,
and he was already an old dude.
He was old by that point.
Sure.
Absolutely. I mean, even Charlie Sheen was kind of older than he is now while he was in the West Wing when you were growing up with it. So, yeah, it's funny to see him because, like, I grew up with Charlie Sheen kind of young, Men at Work and stuff like that. I remember seeing that movie and he was kind of the age as this right here was and whatnot.
Hot Shots.
Yeah, absolutely that. What was the baseball movie, too?
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, but you remember what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that's, seeing Martin Sheen, and man, do they look alike at that age, this younger age, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's just tripping out on Saigon, and we start to get like the voiceovers and stuff like that, because this story is very much told kind of like a book, and he's like the narrator of this story going on. He's going to explain a lot of the things. We get a lot into his mind.
Which was kind of what we got from Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, but much deeper in this. This is it has a lot more narrative scenes in it than Full Metal Jacket.
Because I remember in Full Metal Jacket, the main character was also kind of narrating it.
Yeah, absolutely. He does. He talks, especially when they're in training and stuff like that. He has a lot of stuff like that. So he brings up that when he was here in the jungle, he always wanted to be back home. But then when he was back home, all he could think about was getting back to the shit again. And that's actually like kind of weird. A lot of this movie, you have to you remember when this movie came out, because it was in the early 70s when this movie was being made. So like now we deal with a lot of PTSD and we deal with a lot of the shit like that. This was kind of probably like an discovered country, dug into, that like people would almost get addicted to like the combat and that type of shit, or like, you know, the thrill of it.
The talk about PTSD wasn't like as formed as we have it,
right,
clearly.
Right.
But like, were they even talking about PTSD, or for them it was still like it changes you?
Yeah, it was very much like the 1,000-yard stare type of talk and shit like that. And PTSD was definitely not something that they delved deeply into. Sure. But like even in World War II, guys that come back, that's how motorcycling got popular in the United States. Guys coming back from World War II wanting thrills like they had in war and whatnot, and not being able to find that anywhere else. So they got into motorcycle riding, and Harley Davidson specifically really exploded post World War II by vets looking for something that would give them that thrill. Now, obviously, we're years past that now. So doctors drive fucking Harley Davidsons now and shit like that. But that was kind of where that broke into. So you can kind of understand the mindset of somebody like this he was a high speed kind of guy. This isn't like 2 weeks ago when we did Full Metal Jacket and we were just dealing with infantrymen and stuff like that. This is a special forces guy, so he's been into deep shit and he's gone on kill missions. He's done all kinds of different missions of that nature.
He was essentially an assassin.
Well, yeah, I don't want to call it that.
Well, he did like a political killing. Right?
We'll get to that part. So, yeah, he's really dealing with his emotions at this point. He's just going kind of crazy. But then again, who hasn't like drank, danced around a hotel room, and smashed in their mirror before?
I do that at least once a year.
Exactly. That's what they whenever you check in, they charge you $50 to cover when you break the mirror. Right, exactly. So at this point, some guys show up, they get his shit together, and they give him orders that he needs to get to this new base and get new orders from the general there. So he gets his act together, he gets squared away, shaved up, and he goes to the Air Force Base, and he walks into a house and sees young Harrison Ford. You didn't know Harrison Ford was in this, did you?
I didn't know any of these people were in this.
Oh, yeah, that's
when
right.
I saw Harrison Ford, I was just like, Oh, wow. He looks really young.
Yeah, because I mean, this is like Star Wars time period. You know, he had.
Yeah.
I think the only two movies he did before this were American Graffiti and Star Wars. Star Wars was released in '78.
Yeah, for sure.
This was released in '79. So
yeah, but you said it started filming this shit in like '71.
No, they started developing the shit in '71, right?
Yeah.
Filming and stuff like that. I can't remember when filming exactly started, but they started developing it in the early '70s. At this point, he meets with Harrison Ford. I think Harrison Ford is a colonel. He meets with a general. I believe it's like
by the
a
way,
4-star general.
post-traumatic stress disorder that theory was being developed in 78, 79.
Okay, so at the end of Vietnam, because Vietnam ended in '75.
Yeah,
so
the first like military kind of exploration on the research was in 78.
That makes perfect sense. So we were introduced to Harrison Ford. He's a colonel. There's a general there, 4-star, and there's also like a CIA operative sort of dude.
Yeah.
Very fucking weird, scummy looking dude, right? Like just very.
It's clear they had a very specific representation of what CIA people were like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like skeevy, scummy G-men.
right, exactly that. So they briefly go into his capabilities. This is like where you brought up that he was involved in some political
they
assassination.
Like straight up asked him, they're just like, you killed a guy, right? Like a political guy? And he's just like, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, he's like, I don't know of any such mission.
Like,
and even if I did know of that mission, I wouldn't be able to speak about that mission.
I've never heard of that mission. If I did hear about that mission, I would keep it to myself.
Right, yeah, it'd all be classified, so I couldn't speak on that mission, even if I had heard of that mission before. So
and to reiterate, I have not heard about that.
Right, exactly. So we get the idea he's like a black bag guy. He's done stuff before that's kind of off the books, kind of super classified type of shit. So enter Colonel Kurtz. This is when they bring up
the general. By the way, when I saw him, I was just like, where do I recognize this guy from? He was in Godfather 2.
Oh, sure, of course.
He was the senator in Godfather 2.
Yeah, of course.
And at that moment, I'm just like, wait a second, who made this movie? And then I looked it up and I was just like, oh, it's a Francis Ford Coppola movie.
Yeah, and actually Martin Sheen originally, some behind the scene.
Tell me he was going to be Michael Corleone, dude.
Nailed it.
No way.
He tried out to be Michael Corleone.
Yeah.
He was not the first pick for this character, actually.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
There were other people picked. Those people had conflicts of interest. Boom, he picked this guy because of how good he was trying out for Michael.
Sure,
and that's how he ended up with this role.
Wow, that's so funny. Oh, man. Martin Sheen as Michael Corleone would have been way different.
Of course. I mean, I don't even know how it would... Because, like, Al Pacino, at least, is very Italian and whatnot. And Martin Sheen...
He's got a really Italian kind of look to him, for sure.
Right, exactly. And Martin Sheen doesn't really have that hard Italian look, in my opinion. Yeah. But, I mean, then again, I think it'd be more believable that he was a war veteran, because he does fit that look. I thought, like, Al Pacino...
He's got, like, a young GI look.
Yes, and Al Pacino definitely did not have that look to me. Like, I didn't really... I remember when he... Like, isn't it the first Godfather where he comes home and he's in the suit and everything like that?
No.
I thought there's a scene where he's in his military suit, because he fought in World War II. Isn't that what his story was in Godfather? It's been a long time.
Was it World War II?
I'm almost certain.
Yeah, definitely a World War. I think it was World War One. No, he was just coming back from the war.
Yeah,
because it was like in the 50s.
Yeah, because that's when it takes place. Right, exactly. So it does not take place in the 20s. We are introduced to Colonel Kurtz and kind of get a little bit of his backstory. Did you notice this guy? Of course, well, we'll get to it later.
What?
The Warhammer connection here.
What?
Conrad Kurz.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Colonel Kurtz. Conrad Kurtz. Dude, the assassin that kills Conrad. This means nothing to most of our listeners, obviously.
Yeah. Most of our listeners are like, wait, why
who
do
the fuck?
Why do they know so much about war?
Yeah, exactly. The assassin that kills Conrad Kurtz is M. Sheen.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they totally,
Wow.
And they kind of get into Kurtz, and they basically kind of break down that the dude, like, he was a great soldier, he was very effective, and he just kind of lost it. And he was going to be arrested for killing 4 South Vietnamese people, and that's when he
without orders.
Without orders, he killed these 4 South Vietnamese officers, and he said that they were double agents. And after that, he went on the run, basically, and they've not been able to catch him since then. And they want Martin Sheen to terminate his command, basically.
And more to that, they were explaining how he had like amassed a little group that was considering him a god.
Yes, he had like some followers, and basically he was kind of like you know, he was kind of like a terror agent at a certain point where like the North Vietnamese were like actually fearful of this dude and his unit and whatnot because they would strike where they weren't like expected and things like that. And they were very effective as well at their tactics and whatnot. And he had a bunch of South Vietnamese kind of working with him and fighting with him and stuff like that, along with his unit of like special force guys and whatnot. So,
and they played him a little tape of what he was saying.
Yeah. No, because he's been releasing tapes since then. And that's one of the tapes that that they have of him and his speeches and whatnot as he's gone.
And it was a really profound speech. He was saying that he felt like a snail.
Yeah.
Walking on a razor's edge.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't die.
Yeah.
It was super profound. I was just like, wow, this guy is like, wow, I would follow him into the fucking jungle too.
Yeah, he was going off.
It definitely didn't just sound like nonsense.
Right. It's yeah, that's interesting. So basically, Captain Willard, that's Martin Sheen. His mission is to go upriver, find Colonel, infiltrate his crew, and terminate his command. The CIA guy looks very scummy at this point, and he's like, terminate with extreme prejudice.
Yeah, it's like he was getting scummier and scummier. Like he looks
was getting wetter and wetter. Right? Yeah, exactly that. From there, we cut away from him, and we start to enter the travel. Now, did you know that this was based on a book?
I didn't.
Okay, so the book is called Heart of Darkness, and it's all about a steamboat in Africa traveling to the Congo, and this main character that's kind of the Willard character who joins onto this boat, and the driver of the boat is something Kurtz or whatever. Okay, and he's kind of the antagonist throughout the film, and it delves into like imperialism and the racial issues and stuff like that, and Britain, you know, their imperialism and racial.
I would have really liked
taking
that.
advantage of the Africans and whatnot.
That'd be a really great movie. Why didn't they make a movie about that?
So that's this movie.
Because that's not what this was about.
It absolutely was.
This was about imperialism?
Yeah, very much so. Especially like the extended version. You watched the extended version, right?
I watched the final cut.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get to all that stuff. So most of that stuff is all brought up in this film. It's just you might have just at this point in the movie. You may just not cared. So we'll see where we're at when we get there. Okay. So that's very telling for where this review is going to go. So we enter travel. They start traveling down range. They're starting off on helicopters. He's going to meet a boat, basically. We start with some synth style music. God, I loved it. No crazy door gunner this time on the helicopter. I noticed that for you right away, so we didn't have to deal with any of that shit.
There wasn't a lot of that, like, horrific shit in this movie.
Right.
Like, obviously, there was, like, The Dead, you know, because it was a war movie.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of, like, the lighter side of war, it almost seemed like.
Really?
Well, there was it definitely made it seem more fun.
It might have just been that we should have watched this before we watched Full Metal Jacket, and you would have had a different feeling about this one because it's pretty fucking brutal what happens in this movie and whatnot, and the psychology that goes on in this movie.
Yeah, okay, maybe. I think maybe in comparison to Full Metal Jacket,
maybe
this just seemed way more of like a. This definitely seed like romantic.
Wow, really? I definitely didn't feel that.
No,
way.
I did. How could you not? Okay, let's start talking about this next.
We'll get to it in a second. I think also one of the issues, too, is we're dealing with, like, again, a guy who's very experienced and very different than the characters that we dealt with in Full Metal Jacket. And that's probably one of the reasons why it feels a little bit different. Because it would be like if we watched, well, we'll get to those scenes way later, but the scene where they're at the last stop and then we're dealing with those guys that are fighting.
The ones that have lost it.
Yeah, that have completely lost it. Yeah. Like Full Metal Jacket is more from those points of view than it is from this point of view. Yeah. So that's probably where you feel that way. So at this point, while he's flying down, he's kind of reviewing some stuff and he thinks to himself that this is the first American that he's ever been told to kill. So, and he talks about like how this shouldn't make any difference to him because he's a soldier and he follows his orders. But for some reason, this didn't feel the same as the stuff that he was doing before. So it's starting to bother him a little bit. So we have a lot of fades. It's just like Godfather where it fades from one scene into the other scenes and whatnot. Fades from that scene into him on the boat. He's going upriver. He's got his crew, and this crew is kind of like the crew he deals with throughout the movie. Young Lawrence Fishburne, of course. Man, was that motherfucker young in this movie.
Dude, that guy was like 13 years old.
Yeah, no doubt. I think he was actually 18 years old in this
Sure,
film.
I believe it.
So, yeah.
He looked like a kid.
Yeah, he definitely was. But that
so
was
young.
That's definitely. I think that's kind of the character. That is so much better than the problems I had with Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, for sure. Because they all look a little old.
Right, exactly. Those guys all were like in their 20s and they were supposed to be 17. Like these guys look, at least him especially, looks really young.
Lawrence Fishburne looked young as hell.
Yeah.
Same thing with the not the cook, not chef.
No.
But the other guy, the surfer guy,
Yeah.
Lawrence.
Yeah.
He also looked super young.
Yeah, he looked like he was like 19 or 20. Right, absolutely. And I thought that's a better representation of some of these guys that, like, obviously you're going to have the boat commander who's like an older guy who's been dealing with a lot of shit. He's probably fought in Korea as well.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have like younger dudes because that's what you fill in the ranks with is like newer guys and whatnot, and senior guys become the NCOs.
And then really, Martin Sheen's character, who was a captain, had a very young captain.
Yeah, I figured that he looked. In my opinion, if I had to nail him, I'd probably say he was like 26, 27, almost 30.
Sure.
Somewhere below 30, but not like way lower than 30, but that's completely normal. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially because like to become an officer, you have your college education or whatnot, or you can...
Was that even the case back then?
Yeah, I'm trying to... I don't know. Because I wasn't in fucking Vietnam, so I don't know exactly. I think I
just figure since you're like a war guy.
But I think like... Even like World War II, I'm pretty sure most of the officers were college educated dudes or like had advanced experience or like West Point guys and stuff like that.
Sure,
so like you'd be a lieutenant, in your young 20s, first lieutenant, second lieutenant, all that shit. And then like you'd be a captain, 25, 26. Now you would be like, again, this isn't a dude who's like, I mean, this is make believe. We should point that out too. This isn't like an actual military event.
He didn't actually earn this,
right? Exactly. So like my captains were all probably like in their like 30s or or whatnot. But like like your XOs and all that stuff were like in their 20s and whatnot. And if he was special forces, he might have had a fast track on something like that, and that's how he became a captain or whatnot. Okay, He it is what it is. So
there was a couple of times where I felt like his rank mattered, and there was most of the time where I just feel like it didn't really matter.
I
think it's because the boat people didn't really, because they were like
and
Navy,
so
right?
that's definitely but so it still matters, right? Like just because like if you're like in the Navy and you're like. I forgot what their E1s and E2s are, but they have a name for them, just like, privates in the Army. Like, I don't know if it's sailor or what it is or whatever, right? But if you're like an E1 or E2 and like an Army 03 or 04 is there, you can't be like, oh, you're Army, I don't give a fuck about you. Like, you still like
there's still
yes sir, exactly like that and stuff like that. You still have the chain
That's how little I know about the military.
Yeah, for sure. So like, but here's the thing, right? Even, not always, but in the good situations, experience is more important than rank all the fucking time. Okay, so like I had
where it matters.
Absolutely, I had a friend who was, I believe, an E8 in the Navy. Okay, and like officers, he's still yes sir, no, it's still the same respect, but officers would still like look to like
kind of defer to him.
Well, of course, because like your experience, and that's if you're in war, especially like there's plenty of not going that way, okay, and shitty XOs and all that stuff, like not doing what lieutenants and stuff like that, like not. But you're almost always gonna like defer to like the NCO that's experienced, the staff sergeant, the first sergeant that's like heavily experienced, man, because those people have been like doing their shit for like 15 years, whereas you've been an officer for like 2 or 3 years or whatever. Who the fuck are you gonna? And so like. More importantly, though, like the brown, I think they were called like Brown Navy or something like that. Those are like the dudes, the riverboat guys and shit like that. Were like really well experienced and shit like that. So like he's not going to be like, oh, I'm a captain, you have to listen to me. Like he even points out, I think he even points out in the movie that like
he said, I'm the ranking officer, but
he's in command of this boat,
sure,
right? Exactly. So it's going to be him.
Although later in the movie,
he does go, like, this is my mission. You have to listen. Right?
No,
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So. He starts reviewing Colonel Kurtz's information more, his duggets, and he doesn't understand how this could have gone where it's gone, right? Because he's like...
this guy's perfect.
Yeah, this guy... Dude, like, crazy good. Like, I think he joined Airborne in like his 30s, and he went to Special Forces like in his mid 30s. Okay, so like, and then he talks about like he went through Special Forces training at 19 and it beat the fuck out of him. This dude was like 20 years older than him when he went through Special Forces and shit like that. So like, he doesn't. He's like, this guy's fucking, what the fuck? Like, how could this have gone wrong? And like, why would this guy go to special forces? Because he even brings up like he could have been a general or something like that if he wouldn't have went to special forces.
He could have been chief of staff,
right? For sure. He'd have been in a much higher position, but for whatever reason, that's not what he wanted.
And they also did talk about when he was reading through these documents about how he submitted a paper to like the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yeah.
And the president, and then they like classified the shit out of it. And
this is brought up later, but
it is.
He reviews Colonel Kurtz basically from the time he gets in the chopper, like for the next hour and a half to 2 hours of the movie. Yeah. He's like reviewing stuff over and over because it's a huge file, and then he gets an updated file later on when he gets down the river. But we'll get to that obviously. So yeah, he's just like, this is like the perfect soldier. So he just doesn't understand how this could have happened. They see some air cav but it's not in the spot where they're supposed to be, because they're supposed to meet him further downriver.
Yeah, exactly. They're a little closer than they should.
Right. Why are they here? So then he gets off the boat to go talk to the CEO, Robert Duvall, of course. Another, he's the what is he? What is he?
Consigliere.
Consigliere. Yes, exactly. That's the word I was looking for. And he's there, and they start talking about the air cav, and the air cav, like historically, were kind of badass dudes in Vietnam and whatnot because they were always in the shit. And the colonel finds out who's all there, and he hears about this. Lawrence is there, and Lawrence is a surfer, and he's instantly like, "Oh wait, what the fuck?" He's got to go talk to this guy because for whatever
he's
reason,
a known surfer.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "All right, I got to go talk to this guy." So he goes and talks to the surfer, and he introduces him to two of his soldiers that are also surfers from back home, and they start dealing with all this surf shit. And so like. They have more unit stuff because they
like. Tell me how in this scene this didn't seem much more lighthearted,
dude.
Like Robert Duvall was just like, "Yo, I'm gonna help you out just because there are better waves out there."
I'll get to it because, like, okay, man, like I think I'm
gonna go blow up this entire village because I want to go surfing over here.
I think on the surface that feels like funny. I don't think it's any.
Charlie don't surf.
I don't think it's any more humorous than some of the stuff that happens in Full Metal Jacket. I just feel like this is just as fucked up as some of the stuff in Full Metal Jacket, but it's just played slightly different. Because basically, okay, so this whole point of the scene is they have to meet up with the air cav because the air cav has to move them further downrange so that they can get on this river so they can go up to Cambodia, which they're not supposed to be at, and they're going to stay the night with that unit, and they're dealing with this surf shit. And basically, like,
you know why I'm saying that this feels more lighthearted?
What?
I was watching this movie, and there were a lot of points where I was just like, I think being here would have been a vibe. And I did not think that when I was watching Full Metal Jacket. So, when I saw Full Metal Jacket from the beginning to the end, I was like, deeply uncomfortable. Like, I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to talk about this. Like, that's how uncomfortable I was. And in this movie, when they were, like, on that beach, and they were just kind of shooting, and he was just like, yo, get in that fucking water, I was just like, this shit looks like fun.
Bro, okay. All right. So
they made it seem like this was like a party.
Martin Sheen is like, this is a mission. I have this serious mission I have to get to. Yeah. I need to go here.
He's trying to do his mission. Yeah.
And he's like, you need to drop us right here.
Yeah.
And then they start looking at the map, and they're like, actually, the surf is better here, so I'll take you here.
Yeah.
Like, his mission is like, okay, like.
He didn't care about the mission.
Right.
He was just like, I'll drop you off over here because I want to go surfing there.
Right.
And he looked at the surfer and Lawrence, and he's just like, you want to go surfing there or what?
Yeah.
What do you think about that chop? He's just like, yeah, that sounds good.
I'm glad this one affected you less than Full Metal Jacket, because to me that's fucked up. Like, you're like, yeah, I know you have this important mission and it's a top secret classified mission, but I'm not going to help you out that much. I'll help you out, of course.
Well, I think I want to believe that that's not what it was like.
I mean, like, what do you mean what it was like?
Like, I want to believe that this was a little funny.
Of course, it's a little funny.
But what I'm saying is,
this
dude actually
a caricature.
Yeah, dude actually ripped apart a fucking village so he could go surfing. That would be horrific. That would be some fucking ugly, dark shit.
I think that's the point of the scene, dude. Okay, because the next scene is them.
It was then so dark. I didn't even register it.
Yeah,
I registered it as
absolutely.
Comedy.
That's what the whole scene is. This guy is like,
dude, that's
because
disgusting.
They're like, listen,
that
wait,
makes
stop.
Me sick.
Not only are they like, I want to go here because it's easier to get. They're like, I want to go here because Kilgore. That's the fucking captain's name is Kilgore. He's like, we're gonna go here, and Willard goes, dude, that town is like hairy as fuck. And he's basically like, I don't care. We'll fuck it up because I'm going to go surfing there.
Yeah.
And
they go, like, I don't care about
they go to the more dangerous town.
Yeah.
And
it explode
they fucking kill everybody.
Yeah.
There's a point where like women are running away, and he's like, "Get them, those three right there!" And they gun down those three women, and then come back, land so that they can go surfing. And
that seemed to me, that play lighthearted to me.
Okay, I'm sure, but that's, I don't know. To me, that's just as fucked as most of the stuff that happened.
That's more fucked.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize
you didn't realize
that he was trying to play it straight.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it while you were enjoying it. That's
Jesus
good.
Christ.
That's good. No, that's cool, man. Q, Fight of the Valkyries. They, as we brought up, they fuck up this whole town. The whole scene is done very much like an old school war movie too. This is like 1950s, 1960s style, World War II style movie where they're just flying in and out and blowing up things and shooting people and everything's good. And that's when he gives his napalm speech. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah,
but that's
smells like victory.
but see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. The way that they were, so maybe it's not so much that it was played lightheartedly, right? But it was definitely played with this like feeling of, man, this guy's badass. You know, like that's.
I agree with that, but
that's not how Full Metal Jacket was.
Sure,
everybody in Full Metal Jacket that was doing their shit and that was in the shit was just like dour about it. Like,
yeah, but they bring up like that, like
even the guy who plays Jane in Firefly. What was his Wolf Mother, Animal Mother? That guy, they like it was one of these characters where it was just like but they like introduced him as somebody that had something wrong with him.
Sure,
this wasn't a good thing. Whereas in this movie, all of the like escapades and shit always looked like like we're having a lot of fun doing it. Like it was just like it seemed very
I can see what you mean.
This was
a little bit more romanticized, like you point out. But I still thought.
That's what I'm saying. This movie had more of like this shit seemed like a vibe kind of feel, whereas like the other movie was just like, dude, war is horrific, you know?
I still feel like that's what this movie's conveying, but in a different way
I think that it did more to make it seem like a good time or like a heroic time rather than like a monstrous
wait a second.
Yeah.
They napalm the fuck out of the village.
And then he's like, there's no fucking smell like this shit. And I was like, okay.
That's fucking okay.
He seems like he's enjoying it.
And then they can't surf because they napalm so much that the napalm is pulling. So yeah, either way, at this point.
But then the guy's just like, listen, man, I'm an artist. I can't go surfing in this situation. He's like, they're trying to like get away with it so that he doesn't have to go surfing. Like, I feel like
and then they're like,
that's all jokey shit, man.
Right? I guess, but then Martin Sheen's character and them are like, this dude's fucking nuts. Let's get the fuck out of here. And they're like, they haul ass to get out of there. And he's like,
trying to steal a surfboard.
Right. And then later we find out they stole the surfboard because he's looking for the surfboard. So yeah, that's pretty funny because they get to a point where they want to go upriver, but they want to wait till nighttime to go upriver. So they're kind of hiding underneath these bushes and whatnot. They stole the Colonel's surfboard. The Colonel's got the fucking helicopters going up and down trying to find the surfboard. And it's a very nice board. And I liked it.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
That scene was hysterical.
So they get out and they go into the woods for a little bit. They're going to take a piss and whatnot. And they fuck around in the woods. A tiger shows up at this point. They run back. They're shooting at it. They run back into the boat. And then they point out, never get off the boat. Like that was a kind of like a phrase back in the day for those dudes, like never get off the boat. And then Willard kind of mentally thinks about Kurtz and that whole like slogan of never getting off the boat and how he got off the boat, and that's kind of how he went to where he was. And he keeps having issues with his history. And like I brought up earlier, this is when he brings up that he joined Special Forces really late in life, and that was really weird that he did that. Next scene, they arrive at a resupply station. The captain.
Which resupply station is this?
This is the first one.
Is this the one with the Playboy people?
No. Yep, it is.
It is.
Sorry.
Okay,
yep.
yeah.
So they have to get supplies again, and the captain, Willard, has to bust some ass to get the shit because the supply sergeant doesn't want to give it to them at first.
He's just being a little dickhead.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's absolutely how supply sergeants are. So
really?
Because they have
what is a supply sergeant? I don't know.
I mean, so they're like the people who give you your supplies and shit like that, whatever you need or whatnot. Sure. And they have a very much, like kind of how I have with a movie where I have check sheet that they have a check. Yeah, exactly. So they have check sheets, and it has to match. All the numbers have to match, even though it doesn't really fucking matter.
But then, he grabs him.
And he's like,
"Fuck you!"
Right, exactly. Because he's like, "I'm on a fucking secret mission, a classified mission here, and you're gonna fucking do what I ask you to do, or whatever." So then they, at this point, they're going to get some R&R. So they attended a USO show, which this is like a real thing that they used to do and whatnot. They have these USO shows, and they have like,
you know what this USO show seemed like?
Huh?
A vibe.
Really?
Yeah, it seemed fun.
Oh wow. So they have playmates show up. Basically, three playmates show up.
That wasn't meant to be shown as like a good time.
I mean, like
everyone was laughing, having a good time. Everyone was screaming.
Dude,
they loved it. They're eating it up.
They are, because they're like in the middle of a dog shit situation, and then like women just dancing around on this like stage are like,
you know what we had in Full Metal Jacket?
What?
That prostitute scene.
That
almost made me cry.
Yeah.
And this one we have something completely different.
Oh, okay.
What I'm saying is like clearly it was trying to evoke a different reaction.
Sure. No, I think that it's just a little bit older, so they kind of went with a different flow from it, and it's a different director too. I mean, like. Let's be real. Francis Ford Coppola romanticizes things. I mean, like The Godfather. Like,
he romanticizes gangsters.
You know what? A perfect comparison I was going to bring up later. You compare like Godfather to Goodfella. That's kind of how I would compare this movie to like Full Metal Jacket. Like the one of them is kind of a little bit more romanticized, a little bit more of an adventure. The other one is a little bit more blue collar. It's a little bit more rough around the edges. It's a little bit more in the shit how bad things are. Because like I know Goodfellas is a little bit different for you because like maybe the first half of it is.
Are you saying Goodfellas is the more fun one?
Yeah,
or is the more rough one?
I'm saying it's the more rough one than Godfather. Godfather is more of a...
Yeah, the Godfather is more art.
Yeah.
Whereas Goodfellas is more like, this could get ugly.
Right.
And things got ugly in Godfather, but it was always art.
I mean, it's not as bad as fucking Goodfella, where they fucking... I mean, Goodfella, they... With Billy Bats, that scene, or they fucking shoot Tommy in the back of the head.
But like, what about the cafe scene where he shoots I
don't know. I feel like it's more of a...
And they blow up his wife when she's fucking in the car, dude.
I feel as though Godfather is much more of a high-end romanticized film.
They blow up Apollonia, bro.
Fuck. She was meant to be blown up. So things start to get out of hand. The guys start rushing the stage and whatnot, and they have to the guy running the chopper gets the playmates on the helicopter, and they take off to get the fuck out of there. We get a scene of Willard kind of like thinking about things, and he brings up Charlie didn't have much USO. His idea of R&R was cold rice and rat meat. Yeah. He only had two ways home, death or victory. And he starts to kind of think about like the difference between like the North Vietnamese and our people and shit like that. And it got me thinking about things like even nowadays, like how like the Taliban or like Al Qaeda and people like that. And obviously our soldiers are still fucking badass and shit like that. But like we have NVGs and we have like all this advanced technology and shit like that. And like we still have problems with dudes living in caves.
Sure. Well, Marlon Brando's character at the end, really drives that point.
Well, right. We'll get into all that type of shit. But that's like why like I remember hearing reports about how hard it was to like catch certain people and shit like that. Like for them to catch like U.S. homegrown terrorists, they're fucking mostly stupid. Like they're looking up things on the internet and shit like that. And then before like I've been watching a show on Netflix that deals with it and like how these terrorists, like I didn't know how many terrorists almost pulled off a plot over the last like 20 years since 9/11, and they caught like they basically busted them right before it happened and shit like that. Like the Boston
because they had been following them for months.
Right, exactly. Like because they're looking up how to build this thing.
For sure. On
like,
the internet,
just
Google
fucking dumb as shit.
How to blow up the world.
Absolutely. Whereas like the dudes that are in the shit, they don't use fucking cell phones. They don't use written technology. It's just like Goodfellas, where he didn't use a telephone. A guy runs out, talks on the telephone, runs over to talk to him, then he runs back to the...
He's got one person whispering in his ear, and then another person goes and whispers in his ear.
Yeah, and that's kind of how a lot of these organizations who we have problems with operate, because we're so used to dealing with people that are operating on cell phones and GPSs.
Well, and I think what he's also kind of making a point to say is that for as like, I mean, and this was the USO show part, right? The idea was that even our warriors are coddled compared to their warriors.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of people that would say that even now because like, you know, like we're highly trained individuals that are very well trained. These people over there, they're one of their trainings is living a hard fucking life their entire fucking life for the most part, you know. So it is what it is, right? So they start to head back downriver. They're starting to water ski now. Cap starts to review Kurtz again. Now this is where he brings up his opinions on top. About how the generals are fucking up, and basically, I think he even says something about...
he says this whole war is being run by clowns.
Yes, and they're about to give away the circus.
Yeah,
exactly.
The circus.
Kurtz ordered the assassination of 4 people, South Vietnamese officers. As soon as these 4 people were killed, NVA attacks in his sector completely dropped off. They basically went from being harassed on a regular basis from NVA to nothing. So he must have got lucky. That's what Martin Sheen kind of says. He must have got lucky and guessed the right 4 people or whatever, right? Clearly indicating that, like, this dude knew what the fuck was going on. He was able to fucking take action and basically protect his people at the cost of, you know, more reprimand from the army and whatnot. Yeah. And he's kind of...
and really more than reprimand. Like,
right.
Literally.
They wanted to arrest him at this point. Yeah, exactly. And, like, it's kind of like a view into, like, do these dudes really want to win this war at all? Like, and he kind of mentions that the army kept trying to bring him back in and kind of reel him back in a little bit, but he kept doing what he wanted to do, the way he wanted to do it, and he kept winning over and over and over and just basically overachieving compared to everybody else, even though he was doing it his way, and the army was kind of just not with that at all.
Yeah, but then at some point he's just like, and when he was, or I think this was earlier, because he kept wanting to join something, and they kept denying him.
Yeah.
And then at some point he's just like, okay, well then I'm going to retire. And
that's when he joined Special Forces. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because he kept that, because he was old already. Martin Sheen reviews that they were trying to groom him for a certain position and whatnot. And that's why they kept on denying him going to Special Forces, because he could never get above his colonel or whatever in Special Forces. So, but he didn't give a fuck. That's what he wanted to do. So, at this point, Willard makes a deal, and he kind of reveals a few things to the boat commander, because they still don't even know where they're going. And he's just kind of like, you know, it's classified, blah, blah, blah. So at this point, he actually brings up that they're going to Cambodia.
Because he's just like, we got to keep going up this river. And he's just like, well, if you keep going up this river, we're going to end up in Cambodia. And he goes, keep going up the river. And he's just like, yo, we can't go in there. And he goes... Keep going. Keep yeah, and so historically, in like Cambodia was a neutral place, okay, and but it was like perfect territory because it connected to, you know, it was touching Vietnam, and a lot of the rivers went in, and so you could basically get to different areas of Vietnam going through Cambodia. So both sides abused the fuck out of Cambodia and used it, even though there was an agreement that neither side, the Vietnamese or Americans, would use Cambodia. What we would do instead of, you know, this isn't brought up in the movie at all, but we would use contractors. This is kind of the first war where contractors were started to brought into it, because basically what we figured out, the Department of Defense figured out, was that you could take a guy from the military, end his military career, and just pay him more and continue, and you would be a civilian at that point. And then you could set up a base over here where the military is not supposed to. We don't have anybody from the military there, even though these 12 guys were just in the military 2 weeks ago, basically, and they're now paid under the table, not under the table, even as, you know, contractors to the Department of Defense. So, but isn't that the same thing?
I mean, only in essence, right? Because we're both. So it gets very technical, right? Because
that's what Blackwater was, right?
I mean, that's what all the.
I don't know any of this.
Yeah, there's time. I mean, there's 100.
But I remember during the Bush era, I remember Blackwater.
Blackwater was the one that was kind of like the most. Yeah, exactly.
I was in the media and shit.
Right. So like,
and I remember like I don't know what they did that was wrong. I just remember that they were like,
I think they were
military contractors in Africa, right?
Yeah,
or some shit like that.
Some shit like that, and like. No, in Iraq. There were issues in Iraq and stuff. Yeah. And basically a contractor could be all kinds of different things. So there's contractors for making bolts, because the Army's not making bolts, right? And shit like that. So like bolts and screws, you could be a contractor doing that. The companies that make M16s or M4s, they're contracted through the military and stuff. So then you also have civilian contractors that provide security and shit of that nature. And so that's where like gray area starts to come in, because then like, you are technically a U.S. citizen operating in foreign territories under a contract, but you still have usually the same state motive So are you a state operator? You know, like trust me, this is where a lot of the contractor like dispute gets into and stuff like that. Cause it's like exactly what you're bringing up right now is an issue for
I can't even imagine,
not just us, for like Congress and things like that.
Well, yeah, but I can't imagine anybody from any country going into any other country and killing somebody and getting away with it, no matter who they say they are.
I mean, it matters, right? Like, because
I guess technically you wouldn't blame in that sense the United States. You would just blame the company or
the contractors, right? And sure. People have absolutely been charged with crimes that were contractors and shit of that nature.
But the U.S. goes, oh, weird. We didn't know that they were doing that.
That was, okay. They operated outside of their,
Those are civilians. We have nothing to do with that shit.
It wasn't that. Like, especially not in Iraq. So, like, the U.S. absolutely did that in the 70s and the 80s. Sure. Like, had contractors in Africa and all different areas. And they would just deny, we had nothing to do with that. That was a private citizen operating incorrectly in your country.
Yeah.
Charge them as you would.
Yeah, put them in jail.
Exactly. And they would absolutely do that.
Sure,
there's definitely people in Africa doing time because of things that they did under contract with the U.S. government.
I wonder if they're angry about that or if they were just like, that's what I signed up for.
I mean, like, you would think, in theory, they would feel like that. That's what I signed up for. Yeah. But nobody
this fucking sucks.
I was going to say, very few people take responsibility for their actions. Right, exactly like that.
Beforehand, they're just like, I'm never gonna get caught.
Yeah, exactly. And you get paid a lot of money as a contractor. I mean, they get paid a lot of money. So, but there's like contractors that like, sit on boats and stuff like that. Like, whatever the fuck it is that they need, to guard against pirates and shit of that nature. So, and we would have plausible deniability in the 70s and the 80s and things of that nature. And then he brings up that, to get back to the actual movie, he brings up that all they have to do for him is get him close to the spot where he wants to be dropped off. And at that point, he's going to cut the boat loose and they can go back downriver and they'll be safe. So they don't have to actually get in the shit with him. They get up further upriver and they get to another army base. This one's just about abandoned. And we find out that this is where the Playboy Playmates were landed because the helicopter ran out of gas. And so they make a deal with, like, they're going to trade gas to have time with the Playmates and whatnot. And they're like, you traded gas for time with Playmate of the Month or whatever? No, I traded gas for time with Playmate of the Year or whatever, right? So and then we have that whole weird fucking scene where they're, kind of coked out looking. I mean, obviously not coked out, but they're very much in a shit spot at this point. They get back on the river. The boat commander gets into a bit of a standoff with the captain at this point because there's a supply boat on this river. And the boat commander wants to stop the supply boat and check out everything that's on the boat. And Captain Willard's like, dude, you wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for me. This is not your water to patrol. Keep fucking moving. We don't need. And the boat commander's just like, no, we're going to fucking stop this boat. We're going to check this boat out.
Like, he's really about checking this boat
he's
out.
really like...
And everyone's just like...
Dude, I don't want to fucking do this boat. Right, yeah, exactly.
It's just beans and shit.
Right, exactly. The cook jumps over, starts checking things out. At this point, over nothing,
literally just like a
woman stands up. Fishborn loses his shit and just starts unloading on this boat. Everybody else starts unloading on the boat. They shoot everybody on the boat. They go to see what the woman was getting up to stop him from going into, and it was just a puppy in that spot.
Yeah, for sure.
The woman's still alive though, and they're talking about what they should do about the woman. Like, hey, we need to give her help. We can't just leave her here or whatever. And then Martin Sheen just smokes her ass. Like, I told you shouldn't have stopped or whatnot.
Which, at this point, like, it's getting a little heavy.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit heavier, obviously, at this point. And next scene up, that they hit the last army post on this river. This is the last point where the army can be, because past this is neutral water. Then we just see a bunch of dudes.
Yeah, this is just like fucking like no man's land
at the wit's end, right? There's guys trying to climb on the boat. They're getting in the water. Please let me go with you, or whatever. This and that. They park the boat. Willard has to go get. He's looking for supplies. Basically, he needs gas. He needs bullets. He starts to go through the area. they meet a guy there who was waiting for Willard, actually, but he expected him a few days earlier when things were a little bit more normal and shit. Yeah. He gives them a bunch of more information about Colonel Kurtz, and also some mail for the guys on there. He starts to go through that area. He gets up to like the trench lines and whatnot. He gets in there, and this, one of my fucking favorite scenes. I love this fucking scene in the movie because there's two black dudes, and they're like on a 30, and they're just gunning down motherfuckers out there.
Yeah.
And the dude's going on. He's completely lost it, screaming. He's like, I told you to stop fucking with me. You think you're so bad, huh, nigga? You think you're so bad? Yeah. Martin Sheen's like, what are you shooting at, soldier? Gooks, what the fuck you think I'm shooting at? Oh, sorry, sir. There's gooks on the wire.
He like realizes he's a captain. And he's just like, oh yeah.
But just the way he's like, what the fuck you think I'm shooting at? Right? So good, man. And then like, there's a guy basically stuck on the wire, and they get one of the other dudes to come over and help him out. He's like, the guy in the 30 cal, he's like, Willard asks him, hey, where's the C? He's like, who's the CO here? And he's like, ain't it you, man? And they get up the other guy because one of the dudes is still screaming he's on the wire and he's screaming and shit. You know what that is, right? That's where they set up like barbed wire defenses, so then people can't get past that area, and then you shoot. That's what enemy at the wire is all about. Yeah. And so he unloads a 203 round and then kills the fucking dude that doesn't even look. He kind of just listens, shoots the round.
It's like a grenade or some shit?
Yeah, exactly. Right, a rocket propelled grenade.
Okay,
yeah, exactly that. So
I figured it's what it was, but I didn't recognize what that was.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this point, Willard asked that guy, he's like, hey, do you know who the CO is here? The guy's just like, yep. And walks away
from him. Yeah.
Exactly.
I thought he was going to take him to the CO.
Right, of course. Nope. No, he's just going back to go to sleep again. It's just, this is, the Cap basically gets some supplies. He gets a bunch of rounds and stuff, and he gets back on the boat. And like, this is just, dude, this scene, like you said, it's no man's land. Like, there's things blowing up everywhere and shit like that. It is so fucked.
Dude's falling off of the like ledge. And
absolutely.
Shit. Yeah.
Like, the army has pretty much abandoned this place and just left these dudes there to fucking die.
That's what it seemed
fight
like. For sure.
Until they die for the most part. And it's kind of a fucked spot, that's for sure. But it does make for some laughs, so that's fun. We get an update about a situation that we heard about earlier, and it actually ties into something that the boat commander brought up, because the boat commander earlier says that he also brought another dude downriver a few months back, and that guy killed himself from what he's heard. So find out that guy didn't kill himself. That guy's still alive, and he's actually part of Colonel Kurtz's war band now or whatever. So he was the last Special Forces guy, same mission as what Martin Sheen has right now. So now we're getting to a situation where it's like, what's going on? Is Martin Sheen gonna join this dude or some shit? Like, what the fuck is happening here? Because he's starting to have a little bit of sympathy for Colonel Kurtz. They continue to head downriver.
He's read enough about him that he's at least admiring.
Right. Well, I don't know if he's admiring as much as he's just like kind of confused by the situation and kind of like...
No, but he's got some admiration.
Of course.
For him.
Yeah, you're right.
He's wondering, like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm going to do when I get to him.
I think he brings that up even later on down the movie. They're really bored at this point. Lance fucks around and finds out because he's shooting off fucking like smoke, shots and whatever, and lighting up flares, and then they start getting shot at from the Viet Cong that are sitting on the in the woods right there. At this point, Larry is shot right in the fucking chest, and he is down. They get past that part, and there's a lot of slow, deliberate fog scenes in this. And this is like a scene to me that's like kind of cutting from one part of the film to like the next act of the film. It's going into the next thing. They come across at this scene. They come across a burning house, and they get off to check out what's going on, and like the smoke kind of reveals, and there's a bunch of like Cambodian and French soldiers actually there. They talk to them about their fallen comrade or whatnot, and they have a little funeral for Larry because
the French guy's just like, we honor the dead of our allies.
Yeah,
and like we'll do a funeral for you guys,
right? And then they basically take those dudes to the dude who kind of owns this plantation. Okay,
because it turns out this is not a military installation. This is a plantation.
It's
owned
a plantation.
By some French.
Yep. Yeah. Imperial French when they were basically imperializing Indochina areas and whatnot and taking over these.
It's like this plantation's been in my family for generations,
right? And then they get into like just basically an R&R scene, and there's
have a little dinner.
Right. They basically have a dinner and they have arguments over the place and whatnot. Yeah. And there's a lot of
the two dudes start talking about the difference between socialism and communism.
Right. Well, yeah, and talking a lot about communism and like why the Americans waited to get involved in World War II because they knew exactly what was going on in Nazi Germany, but they didn't want to do anything about it because the Nazis were fighting communists and they were enemies of the communists and whatnot. And he really starts to like delve into America's self-righteousness is kind of what this whole scene is, and like how they basically will just, like kill people and basically say it's for your freedom. We're doing this for the right reasons or whatnot. And we're giving you your freedom, whether you fucking want it or not. Like, you're going to get it. And it's led to different wars, the war in Korea, the war in Vietnam now. Like, they could easily just leave Vietnam to be a communist nation and whatnot, but they just can't do it because that's how America is and whatnot. He brings up the French guy who owns the plantation, brings up like, this is the difference between the French and the Americans, because the French are going to only fight for their land. Like, this is my land and I'm going to fight for this land. I'm not going to go fight for that land over there. I'm going to fight for the land that's mine. Whereas America, we're going to fight for that land over there too, because by extension it becomes ours and, and whatnot. And there's a funny, analogy with an egg in this scene that I was like, this must be the stupidest fucking analogy I've ever seen in my life. Here's an egg. Break the egg. You see, the white leaves, only the yellow is left. They're like, yeah, that's some fucking racist ass shit. But they get back on the river at this point and they start getting pelted with arrows.
They don't get back on the river.
What?
Then he smokes some opium.
Yeah.
And we have the most romantic scene in all of Hollywood.
This is our Valentine's Day dedication.
Yeah. We picked this movie for Valentine's Day because of this scene.
Right. This love scene is it's a beautiful
They
scene.
had something there. Yeah, there was something really special.
You're right. And then they get back on the river. They start getting pelted by arrows and
I was just like, do you want to drink some cognac? And he's just like, no, I don't want to do that. And he's like, well, the war's still going to be going on tomorrow. And he's just like, yeah, okay, we can go fuck. That's right. I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, your mission's going to be your mission tomorrow. Yeah. So,
I just like how he's just like, he concedes to fucking. Like, he's just like, okay, we can go fuck.
Yeah, I get it. So they start, on the boat, they start getting pelted by arrows. And they start to get, like, defensive and shooting and stuff like that. But then they figure out it's only a toy arrow. And they're just basically being pelted by toy arrows. And Lance kind of puts two in his head or whatnot, and everything's kind of going well. And they kind of calm down. They stop shooting and whatnot. And the captain is like, but the captain wants to fire on these people because he not the captain. I'm sorry, the boat commander wants to fire on these people, and he pulls out his M16 when everybody else stops, and he's like still firing at people. And Martin Sheen just takes control of the boat and starts driving the boat and whatnot. And the boat commander turns around to like kind of get pissed with him, and boom, he gets hit right in the fucking chest with a spear. And his reaction is almost like the indignity of like getting killed by a fucking spear.
Yeah,
like
he's just like a spear.
A spear, right? Like, what the fuck? I got killed by a spear. And like, there's this nice scene of him like, Martin Sheen kind of like laying him down to like, like care for him as he's dead. And the guy tries to kill Martin Sheen on the spear and so Martin Sheen has to like kind of finish him off so he doesn't get fucking impaled on the same spear that he's on. Like, what a scene, right, man? That was kind of fucked up. But at this point, Martin Sheen's like, all right, we're in fuck city, so I'm just going to reveal the rest of this mission to you guys because I don't give a fuck at this point. And this is like where like I think you're supposed to like start to question how he feels about this whole thing, because if he was like a true soldier,
the implication.
Yeah. If he's a true soldier, he wouldn't reveal this because this is still a top secret mission. But at this point, he's just like, fuck it, I'm good. We start to flirt with him possibly.
Yeah, because he straight up tells the chef and the other guy who's clearly lost it, Lawrence.
Yeah.
I'm here to kill a soldier who went like rogue.
Yeah, and like the cook, the only one who's like completely still with it, is like, we're on this mission to kill a fucking American. Like that's the like, and he gets really kind of pissed off about this.
He's like, I thought we were gonna blow up a bridge.
Right, exactly, or blow up a bridge or some shit. And it's.
And I like how by this point Lawrence has lost his.
Yeah, he is fucking gone at this point. Yeah. He starts to get gone at the Playmate scene where he's like fucking with the one Playmate chick, and he's like, like discovering his
tits.
He takes
acid too.
Yeah, he drops a bunch of acid, so he's goner than gone at this point. So they finally arrive at Colonel Kurtz's camp, and Dennis Hopper's there. I'm sure you don't know who this guy is.
I know who Dennis Hopper is.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I know.
Excellent. Okay. And he's a photojournalist there. And he starts explaining what's going on at this camp and whatnot, and how Kurtz is. And he's so profound, man. Like, sometimes he won't even say hello to you. Yeah. Other times he'll walk up to you, look you right in the eye, and says, do you know that if is the middle word in life? And if you put if together with, and he's just going.
He seems like he's on acid.
Yeah, very much
and
so.
That he's referring to a larger than human character. Like he's like talking about this dude like he's literally like an avatar, some kind of like greater man.
Right. You know? Right. And he gets into like, he basically just, like you point out, he gets into like all the talking he's done and how he's enlightened everybody. And
how insightful he is.
Right,
like otherworldly insightful.
And you notice that you look around and like, everybody in this camp is like a zombie. Basically, they're all high as fuck for the whatever they're doing a lot of it because all the Cambodians there and everybody else is just kind of gone. And he brings him in off the boat and he talks to him and whatnot. And he's like, oh, don't worry about, these dead people, whatever it is, what it is. These people went away from the message and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And he gets off the boat. He kind of walks out and he meets the
guy who was sent before him.
The dude who was sent before him and the other soldiers Colonel Kurtz had with him before he went rogue and whatnot. And all those guys are there. And he looks at him, and then he looks over, and there's all these heads and whatnot. Oh, man, don't worry about the heads. I know it's a little crazy. He even admits sometimes he gets a little wild with it and whatnot.
Yeah, he'll be the first to admit.
He'll be the first to admit it or whatever, right? Like, trying to, like, just justify this crazy shit. And I want to point out in the background, we see, like, a wall, a very, Cambodian, Aztecian wall or whatever, and written on the wall.
I like how you just said Cambodian, Aztecian.
Yeah, it's all the same.
That's that was one of the roughest sentences I think you've ever said to me.
Well, I've said some sentences. So, and on the wall is scrolled "Apocalypse Now."
Yeah.
Bing, 2 points for using the. I'm always gonna fucking give credit.
Pointed those out, yeah.
And so they find out that Kurtz isn't in the area, that he's gone away, and he'll come back, and so they just basically have to wait for him. And he goes back to the boat and he kind of talks to the cook about it. And the cook is like, dude, you want to kill this fucking guy? I'm down to kill this fucking guy. I just don't give a fuck anymore. He says something about how he used to think that, like, if he did something bad, he'd end up in hell. But he's like, at this point, I don't give a fuck as long as it's not here. And he basically kind of reveals a plan to them, to the cook. He's like, all right, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to go on land and try to decipher what's going on with him and get a meeting with him. I want you to stay by the radio. If I'm not back in a certain number of time, I want you to call in. Here's the coordinates. Here's the code word you have to give them. Call them the airstrike, and we'll take this whole area out and whatnot. So they have a plan at this point, and he gets back on the land. And he starts to try to go up to the temple where the Aztecian Cambodian temple. I'm just fucking around now at this point. He's starting to go.
I'm kidding. Not Aztec, Maya.
Yes, the Mayan temple that's in the area. No, not Mayan. Japanese temple. So he starts going to the Japanese temple where Colonel Kurtz is at, and he kind of gets ambushed by people, and they like take his weapon from him, and they kind of drag him through the mud and whatnot, and they tie him up and they bring him to Colonel Kurtz, and he has his first conversation with Kurtz at this point, and this is when Kurtz like kind of starts to drop his first knowledge on him, and he's like, hey, are you here for this or whatnot? And he's like, are you?
Well, first he asks him where he's from.
Yeah, he starts talking about,
and he talks about
Ohio,
a river that he goes down, that he went down in Ohio, where he came upon what he thinks was a farm of gardenias, which are a very pretty flower. And he talks about how like that's like heaven and things like that. Like he starts to get really poetic about his experiences in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. And then he basically asks him straight up. He's like, "Why are you? Why am I supposed to be killed?" Yeah. And the captain says that he's gone insane and that his methods were too far, according to him.
And he even said, do you think that you are gonna do what you were sent to do?
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, my mission was classified. Yeah. And he's just like, well, it's not that classified anymore. Right. It's a little in the open now.
We kind of know now. Yeah. And a scene that was important earlier that now plays into this part is earlier after he meets Kilgore and the whole scene with him and the surfing and killing people just so they could basically surf and whatnot. He thinks to himself, what the fuck method could Kurtz have done that was so bad that after seeing what Kilgore's out here doing. Kilgore's willing to blow up a fucking town just so he can use a surf area. Yeah. And they don't want Kilgore dead. Like, what could he have possibly done in the field that would have led to him to the army wanting to, take him in and kill him for what he did? He asks him if he's an assassin, and Sheen responds, "I'm a soldier." And he responds, "You're neither. You're an errand boy sent by grocery clerks to collect a bill." Very Godfather-ian.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very above the situation.
Yeah, of course, I know.
It was like, well, let me give you a little bit of poetic context.
Ins lately with the Aztecian and all that stuff. So I had to.
No, but it was just funny how like his character is this like. I see through your bullshit,
right?
And that's the kind of
I think this
avatar that he is.
I think this scene is starting to develop. Earlier, we hear about how this character is like larger than life. Mm-hmm. He's this god-like character, prophet-like character, dropping knowledge. And when you hear the first radio broadcast that they hear, it's like, this guy's full of fucking shit, right?
Yeah,
like a snail on a razor, like shut the fuck up, right? Yeah. And then you hear more about it, and then you see the information about it. And I think this is supposed to start to be like, when you're in the presence of the man, it's a lot different than when you just hear about him or you just hear his words.
And they talked a little bit about that when he was with Kilgore,
right?
Who was just like there was like a light to him, like he like shone bright, when he was in the room, like you could tell that this guy wasn't going to be hurt,
right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. He brings up that like he would go through anything, and that guy is not going to be the one that's getting hit or whatever. Yeah. Like there's something about him that's just above and beyond.
And that's what this guy was. It's not that he was particularly insightful. It's that he had a very charismatic like attitude to him. And they also brought up an allusion to or a reference to Charles Manson earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
About how like it was very similar, like the kind of human being that he was. Where it's just not that there's anything particularly insightful about them. They're just very charismatic, cult leaders essentially.
Yeah, we've talked about that before with charisma gets you a lot in life and whatnot. Absolutely. And I think that's part of the point of Kilgore as opposed to Kurtz. Like, these are almost the same kind of dude, basically, like you point out, very charismatic guy, these leaders of men that people are following. And I think they're displaying that to show the juxtaposition of Kurtz and where he's at and how the army feels about him as opposed to, Kilgore. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. So at the end of this conversation, the next scene we see is he's locked up in a bamboo prison. And Hopper comes over and starts to chat with him, kind of brings up some things like, hey man, he doesn't want you dead, clearly. Mm-hmm. He's got something more planned for you. You're part of this because I think, and he lays it out there. He's like, I think the guy's dying. I think he's at the end, and he wants somebody kind of to take his position, and that's what he kind of thinks Martin Sheen is, because no one else here can do it. Like, everybody else is just a follower, of his or whatnot. And Martin Sheen can be more. He can be molded into the next leader of this apocalyptic cult for the most part. We flash over to Cookie. He starts to get really nervous. He starts double checking the radio, making sure that somebody's there so he can call in the airstrike because it's getting close to the time. The next scene we see cuts over to Martin Sheen. Now he's locked up outside. It's raining, and he's kind of tied to this bamboo. He's tied to the bamboo prison rather than in the bamboo prison. Brando shows up. He's got face paint on and everything else, and he kind of just looks at him and just stares at him for a while, steps up, and then he throws the cook's head into his lap. And this is when he kind of knows he's in a fucked position at this point because the cook's dead, and like you point out, Lawrence is basically part of the cult now. He's completely joined into this. We transfer from there into him being in a hot box. Kurtz shows up. He reads Time magazine to him, and he starts reading about things about the war that people are reading at home and how he feels about it. Do you agree with this or whatnot? And he asks him a bunch of questions about that. And then he's informed that he'd be free. He's going to be freed, but don't try to run. Mm-hmm. You'll be shot if you try to run. But you're free to go about the camp as you'd like now. We're going to get you back out of here. And they bring him out, and he starts getting nursed back to health, and they start feeding him and everything else. And while Kurtz continues to indoctrinate him and basically keeps talking to him, and he starts
talking to him
about all the different things,
reading to him, reading poetry to him, all sorts of shit.
Captain Willard at this point, he starts to question his mission in his own head. Do I really even want to kill this guy? we get into a wild party night at this point. Things are all getting crazy, and he's on the boat, and he decides, all right, I'm going to go forward with this mission. I got to do this mission. But
his mentality was like, I think he wants me to kill him.
Yes. I think that's exactly what the point is, because he even mentions that he only takes his orders from the jungle at this point, and the jungle is what's coming to claim him for and I think you nailed it. He's ready to die at this, and
he almost seems like the vibe he's picking up from everybody else is that they want him to die too.
Well, we know that because of what happens after.
Sure,
he and Colonel Kurtz brings up that one of the things he regrets kind of is that his kids will never know why he did what he did or what's going on here. Why he's in this position, because even the captain that was sent before said, we know that that guy kind of abandoned his mission, and he's like, fuck, I'm done with this, and he sends letters home to his family that say that, but they were intercepted, and and we saw Willard kind of read those notes, and he's concerned that Colonel Kurtz is concerned that his family will not know the justification of why he chose the steps that he did. Willard goes on his mission, does the whole makeup thing, comes out of the water, like the most famous scene that, everywhere, that scene. And he creeps into the temple, and Colonel Kurtz is recording another one of these messages. And while the party's going on out there, they are slaughtering a bull. And at the same time, Willard kills Colonel Kurtz in a very similar fashion to how the bull's getting chopped down. We exit that scene into Willard stepping out from the temple. He's still got his blade, and he's got all the information that Kurtz left for him, including the letters. We're supposed to insinuate the letters to his family and whatnot. And
everyone starts bowing down. Yeah,
everybody in the village starts bowing down to him and praising the guy or whatnot.
Yeah,
he gets onto his boat, and he starts to leave on his boat, and we kind of transition to a statue, and then it fades to black, and that is the end of the film.
Yeah.
No beginning credits, no end credits in that film. And that's it, man. That is Apocalypse Now. A couple of behind-the-scenes things before we get into our opinions. They originally wanted to film this movie.
Mm-hmm.
This is an insane fact. They wanted to film this movie starting in 1971 in the Vietnam War. They wanted to go to Vietnam and film because they wanted the actual things like soldiers and fighting and things like that.
Yeah.
And basically they were like, some other folks around the presentation were like, we're not fucking doing that.
Yeah.
We're not going to the actual war. We will work it out and figure out how we're going to do this.
Sure.
The original person that was going to direct this film for Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas.
Oh, really?
He turned it down to do Star Wars. Both are fine. So
they're both similar.
Yeah, exactly. Most of this movie was filmed in the Philippines because it was just cheaper, and they could use soldiers from there and whatnot, and look similar.
Sure. Yeah.
And there was a lot of American equipment that was left in the Philippines, and so they had access to that for very cheap price. Originally, Willard was going to be Steve McQueen.
Okay,
You're familiar with that guy.
Okay, yeah.
He couldn't do it because. There was a couple things with him where his price was really high.
Yeah, wouldn't have Steve McQueen been a lot older too?
No, not at this time.
No, I thought Steve
he was
McQueen...
like in Bullet and stuff like that in the 70s.
Yeah, okay, all right. I thought that he was more of like a 50s guy than a 70s guy.
I don't think so, man. And then the next person that was approached, obviously Al Pacino.
Mm-hmm.
Al Pacino turned it down because I guess when he filmed Godfather 2, he got really sick during that filming when he was abroad, and he didn't want to risk that again. And a lot of people just didn't want it. And then it came out that Clint Eastwood was also offered this role, and another guy who just didn't want to go abroad. They didn't want to do the filming abroad. And a lot of guys wanted to be...
it seemed like they were in the shit for a while.
They were. And
the fucking jungle.
The only person who wasn't there for a long time was Marlon Brando. And a lot of guys wanted that role.
Yeah.
Because they were like, you only had to film for like 2 weeks, basically, in the jungle. But like, they pretty much wanted Marlon Brando for that role. That was kind of like what they wanted. Even though...
Was this Brando's last big movie?
I don't remember.
I know he had a bit part in Superman, but...
Yeah, he was the... he's
dad.
Isn't he? Yeah, his dad. And Jor-El. And another thing, Dennis Hopper, at least half of his dialogue and stuff completely ad-libbed. Huh. And I guess like Francis, or when they were doing this, like they were just impressed by how he could talk and just like go into these like fucking rants and stuff like that. Yeah. That's pretty much how he got that part. Like they were just like, yeah, this is exactly what we want. Space case sort of like photographer and whatnot.
Yeah. Super hippie photographer guy.
Exactly. Yeah, sure. The last thing was they actually got into a bunch of trouble because for the scenes in the where they're in Brando's camp, they have, obviously you saw like all the dead bodies and stuff like that in there. And they hired somebody to bring them, set corpses to do that. Well, the guy turned out to be a real gravedigger who digged up graves and gave them real corpses to use for that.
Get the fuck out. No way. Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right?
Jesus, yeah.
So that's pretty much all the behind the scenes that I have that are of import in this. A lot of this, like I point out, came from Heart of Darkness, and there was a kind of a dare to like there's been attempts to create a film from Heart of Darkness before, but nothing was really well done. So they wanted to do a film. Now, again, like you pointed out, this isn't like shot for shot Heart of Darkness in any way, sense, or form. It's inspired by it. You can see the boat going up the river and whatnot. That's kind of the same kind of thing. These native people that are there, and then people dying off one by one, and then same thing, main character killing Kurtz and whatnot. So that's very much in line. Or I don't know. Kurtz definitely dies. I can't remember exactly how that goes, but it was just inspired by it, okay? Mm-hmm. And at the time, Coppola wanted to do a movie, and he was kind of in between of what he wanted to do. And actually, Spielberg and George Lucas, who he was friends with, were the ones who kind of talked him into doing a Vietnam War movie. And so that's where this came from. It's weird that this movie was like started to be created during the actual Vietnam War. It's almost like you pointed out, like kind of romanticized. Like it feels very weird that you would want to do that while the war was going on and whatnot. But like it makes much more sense that Full Metal Jacket, which came out in the 80s, years after the war.
Now that's a stark look at what had happened.
Right, exactly.
Whereas this is just like, it almost seems like a propaganda piece.
And maybe that's why this does come off a little bit softer than the other film, because it was at a time where the war wasn't hated as much. It wasn't in the late 70s when this was written.
I mean, it was hated by some.
Of course. Every war is always hated by some. I mean,
because that was one of the more,
there are people who didn't want to be involved in World War II. So,
I know, but that was it was a very publicized disagreement with that war.
Sure.
There was a lot of protests against that war. That's, in fact, when you think anti-war protests, you think the Vietnam War.
Yeah, of course.
That's when they were like burning their draft cards and like picketing outside of Congress and shit.
Right,
that was,
right. Yeah, no,
that's
you're
the
right.
big anti-war one.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So, so in the end, what did you think? Apocalypse Now, 1979. Give me your recommendation.
I think this was I think this was a great concept for a movie. I think this movie would have been perfect if it would have been released this year. I think that the biggest problem with this movie was that it had atrocious pacing. This was a 3-hour-long movie that could have been an hour and a half long. I think that if they ever remake this movie and they take out an hour and a half of nothing happening, then this movie would be great. And replace Marlon Brando's character with somebody more compelling. I think that if you replace Marlon Brando's character with a better version of that same character,
like a more charismatic, like a Matthew McConaughey or something like that.
No, Matthew McConaughey is charismatic, but he's not like cult leader.
Who like give me an actor that you would? Jared Leto.
It's not so much the actor that they should replace him with; it's the character should be written to be more convincing. Because Brando's character seemed, who makes a better one? James Spader. James Spader as an actor with a better character being written would make a more convincing this thing. Because the story, the narrative that they're playing is cool. I actually I dug the idea of having to go deep into the jungle with some guy that became a cult leader because he's just he was really smart and he got on some shit and he just ended up being a really charismatic cult leader. But Brando let me down in the character. When they finally got there, I was just this guy is just some egghead, he just seemed like some fucking who would have listened to this guy, what's his name, the photographer guy?
Yeah, Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper when you see him, he plays this guy up like he's going to be like this like demigod almost. And this guy is like he's a basket case. There's nothing convincing about him. So you replace this character with a more convincing version of the same character, but more convincing. And you take the movie down from the 3 hours that it is to an hour and a half.
So the original release of this movie was about 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Okay, well, yeah, you shave off 30 minutes, you're already doing
the whole French scene wasn't in the film.
Okay.
The Playboy scene where they meet up with the Playmates later wasn't in the film. Okay. And those two scenes right there is like 20 minutes easy, 20 to 5 minutes.
Like 30 minutes is a start. I think you can shave off at least an hour and put it down to 2 hours instead of 3 hours. You shave off an hour and you give me a more convincing end character, and I'm just like, wow, what a cool movie. But because of the way that it was done, there was just so much that I was bored by. I was like, holy shit, are they fucking taking their sweet ass time to get there? And then when they finally get there, I was just like, this was your payoff? Fuck this movie. So I didn't like the movie. I think the movie could be redone better. I think that there's something in this movie that would have been perfect. Great story, great narrative, but it was just poor execution. It was too long, and I didn't believe the main antagonist at the end there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, no shit on Coppola. Coppola clearly is a good director. I loved The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. Those are some of my favorite movies of all time. Like, I can quote those movies, like that's like some great, great cinema. And so, like, it's not like I have a problem necessarily with Coppola's pacing. I just think that he missed the mark here. He did. Maybe he was just like, dude, we're in the fucking jungle. I'm gonna fucking film, and he just wanted to make the most of the time that he was there. But it just wasn't a concise movie. It was too meandering. It was super meandering. That's a better word for it. It took its sweet time to get to nothing, and I was like, okay, it had me hooked. Right? I wanted to see the end. Yeah. I was so intrigued by what Marlon Brando's character was going to be like. I was like, dude, like he's going to be some like wild shit. And then they get to him and he was nothing. He was a nothing character. And so I was just like, okay, this is dumb.
All right. So obviously I don't agree.
Okay.
I think Marlon Brando's character hammers it home even more realistically. I get what you're saying, like, I want a more charismatic person, because that's what you want from a cult leader, because that's what would attract you to a cult. But see, here's the thing, right? No, wait, I want to... Hold on.
I disagree.
Okay, I don't think cult leaders in reality are that charismatic person. That's that person that's able to wow a crowd. I personally feel, because I've watched specials about Jim Jones, I've watched special about David Koresh, and I've watched specials about Charlie Manson, a few others, odds and ends and whatnot. And I don't think that way much at all. I think that they are charismatic to certain individual who is able to bring that in.
But in all the things that you've seen about them, you've seen them be that person. Regardless of which way they're being that person, they're still like looking at people and telling them shit and getting them hyped, and everyone's just like buying into it. And that's not what this character did.
I mean, there's a quote in him in this film that he drops where he says, "We train young men to drop fire on people, but their commanders won't let them write fuck on their airplanes because it's obscene."
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of things like that are just, I personally think, to people in war, or like a person who's like questioning, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
Why the fuck am I here? This guy would be a person who you would follow, like, yeah, this guy's got it. Like, this guy is even better than I am, and he's questioning it and whatnot. So I definitely feel as though Marlon Brando was fine. This movie, to me, is 10 out of 10, man. I love this fucking movie. This movie to
10 out of 10.
Here's the thing.
Jesus Christ. Hey, I hope everybody who listens to this also listens to our Marvel podcast.
I agree.
He shits a lot on Marvel.
Because I'm about to go there.
This is a 10 out of 10. Okay.
I'm about to go, and I'm about to breach the Marvel thing. Every time we talk about a Marvel movie, you're like... But
you're talking about like pace, and like your check boxes are pacing and tone and cinematography, and this movie, like, the pacing was atrocious and the writing was bad.
The pace, whoa! First of all, I'm going to disagree
for the last character. Everything up to there was fine. That last character, the writing was bad.
I was shocked how great the acting was in this film.
Yeah, the acting was good.
The acting was unbelievable. The story was amazing to me. Everything about this to me was just great. I thought, like,
unbelievable.
The difference between you and your pacing problems and me, the pacing isn't slow to me. The pacing is methodical. Every single part is bringing you to a certain feeling that you're supposed to have about the scene.
It brought me to a very specific feeling. It was boredom.
Very much attrition of the war and dealing with the situation that you're in. I felt like I find it so hilarious that you'll watch a 3-hour Marvel movie and be swept away because it's kiddish, because action happens all the time. Yes, and see, that's the thing. It's so hilarious to me.
And I'm not saying that this is like.
I can't wait till we get the people commenting in the comments about how he didn't like this movie because it was paced like shit, but he liked Avengers Endgame.
Sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of clowns in the comments saying that I'm like some kind of child for liking Marvel movies over this movie. But listen to me. It's not like I judge this movie on the same fucking like I get when a movie's trying to be serious, right? There are serious movies that I'd like. There are serious movies that I enjoy. Like, for instance, Saving Private Ryan, right? It's a very similar kind of movie. You're going into the shit, you know.
Similar in some ways.
Okay, similar in some ways. It's also an action movie. It's, an army movie. It's a movie.
Definitely doesn't have the same messages as this movie.
No. But it's another 3-hour long fucking epic, and I love that movie. Like, that movie is really well done. It's not like and I wouldn't say that either of these two movies are trying to be serious in the way that a popcorn flick is trying to be serious. Clearly, the other movies I like because they're a fun time. They're escapism. This isn't supposed to be escapism. This is supposed to be a comment.
This is supposed to be artwork.
Yes, and it's supposed to be commentary. And I disagreed with its application and expression of that commentary. I wasn't convinced by the movie. Okay, right? We have a differing opinion. That's fine, everybody. But for you to say this movie was 10 out of 10 is fucking bonkers.
I'm not even going to stop there. This is like
I'm not even going to stop there. You're going to double down here.
I went through our catalog of films. This is by far the best film we've reviewed.
Dude, not like Full Metal Jacket was a better movie than this.
Not like from maybe an enjoyment of like, oh, I'm having a good time sort of thing. But like from a filmmaking standpoint, this was so good. The cinematography was just fucking phenomenal. The going in and out of smoke to do the fades, everything about that was so good in the development. I was on this journey with Martin Sheen, Colonel Willard, and I thought to myself, now I understand why he enjoys these childish Marvel movies so much, because he allows himself to fall into them and become part of the film. And that's what this film does for me, because it's so well done.
I think I could have forgiven you. Go ahead.
That you fall into this film and you are swept into it. And when I sat down and I looked and now I watched this on my PC, and I remember thinking to myself as we broached this film and brought up this film. At first I asked you, hey, do you want to do Platoon instead?
Yeah.
Because Platoon is shorter, it's more action-packed, and I thought you might like that movie a little bit better. But you were like, no, I want to do this movie. And this movie won Film of the Year. And it is no question to see why it did. Now, the only thing you could complain about, and I'd hear that complaint, is that the pacing is very 1970s. Yeah. And that's fine, because it was made in the 1970s. Sure. Yeah. So I totally get that complaint.
And I was
very
say,
similar to like Alien. Alien had some few pacing issues, and that was also made in the 1970s. So I get that.
But see, Jason, again, I'm not saying that this movie was shit.
No, I didn't say you
I'm
did.
saying that this movie didn't stick the landing, and that, and I'll totally concede to you right now that if the ending had been more compelling, I would have been more okay with the journey getting there.
Oh man, I thought the
journey getting there was a little long, but I would have forgiven it if they could have given me a compelling third act. But the third act was such a letdown. Marlon Brando's character was so fucking flat and uninteresting and non-compelling that I'm like, okay, well, that was a little bit of a waste of time.
I feel the exact opposite. I thought Marlon Brando's character was like this awesome space case sort of like...
He wasn't saying anything interesting.
I disagree, man.
Listen, you shave off an hour of this movie and give me a better Marlon Brando character, and I'm happy with it.
I hung on every word Marlon Brando said.
What?
I was honestly. So when I sat down to watch this movie, I sat down on my PC to watch it, and like I brought up about Platoon earlier, I got into this and I go, oh fuck, this movie. I haven't seen this in a long time, and then I saw 3 hours, and I'm like, fuck, this movie is going to be a dragging movie.
Yeah.
And by halfway through, I was like, how how long has this been? Hour and a half. I thought this is, I was like shocked how well
the first hour and a half. This film I'm not gonna lie, the first hour and a half flew. Like,
and how I was
really
swept up. It. I just. The
first hour and a half, I was really enjoying
I said
it.
10 out of 10 to mock the shit out of how you always respond to every Marvel film.
I'm so glad that
this movie is, like I said, for sure, in my opinion, the best film we've reviewed.
Wow.
And this movie is regularly on top 10, top 50 films of all time lists. Mm-hmm. And I can easily see why it is. Because from a film art standpoint, this movie is amazing. I get how, like, you could be on the whole, I like Marvel movies because I enjoy them and they're fun to me and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Totally understand that.
And I want everybody, because of all the conversations that we've had, right? Yeah. People literally, since we've started this podcast, have heard two things.
Yeah.
I haven't watched old movies.
Yes.
And I love Marvel movies. Yes. Right? That's the entire context of
that could literally be our podcast name.
Yeah. The problem is, though,
old, only Marvel.
I love a ton of movies. We just don't talk about it because that's not the nature of the show.
Right. That's not the point.
And we also just, we've got another podcast about Marvel movies, and we've talked a lot about Marvel because both of us like Marvel, so we talk about a lot about that. But I do love a ton of movies.
Sure.
I enjoy greater cinema, especially more recent greater cinema.
What kind of film on like a top 20 style list do you watch and go, I really like that film?
The Godfather.
Okay, all right. That's so crazy to me.
Saving Private Ryan. Those are all on top fucking films of all time.
So
I like those movies.
It's insane to me that The Godfather 1.
Yeah.
You enjoy that movie.
You know why?
Didn't enjoy this
film.
Payoff.
Because here's the thing. Because there was payoff.
The thing about this
was worth the
when I watched this
time.
movie, I instantly thought to myself, while I was watching this movie, I'm like, this is the Godfather war film. Like, this is like...
kind of, except for in The Godfather, all of the characters were compelling, and in this one, the one that was supposed to be the most compelling wasn't.
I don't think he's supposed to be the most compelling. The most compelling character is supposed to be Willard.
No, Willard is supposed to be the one-to-one, the audience. Willard is supposed to be... he's not supposed to be a compelling character.
I disagree.
He's supposed to be your analog.
Right.
And it's like saying Neo is supposed to be the most compelling. He's not supposed to be the most compelling.
Who's the most compelling character in that series of films?
In The Matrix? Probably Morpheus or Smith.
Maybe Trinity. But I don't know.
But Neo's supposed to be your analog. He's supposed to be blank slate. You put yourself into that. There's nothing compelling about that.
Yeah,
you're supposed to feel conflicted like Willard is. You're supposed to go, is this guy deserving of being killed or not? The guy in question, kill him. He's a weirdo. He's a fucking...
He did do that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there was nothing compelling about it. What I'm saying is there was nothing compelling about it. I was never conflicted. I was always just like, he's got all these people, I don't know. Got him hostage.
I think the reason I think that ending is so good too is because I feel as though you've heard about Colonel Kurtz, you've read about Colonel Kurtz, or he has and we have through him.
Sure, yeah. He's talked to us about it the whole time.
All this stuff about Colonel Kurtz, this crazy godlike figure to these people, and then you meet him, and it's like he's just a dude.
Yeah,
and that's kind of how Willard kind of reacts to it as well. Like of course he's like entranced by him for a minute, but then he's kind of like, fuck this guy. I don't get this at all. And he kills him. And not only does he kill him, he doesn't like then join that position and like take over as a guy. He's like, no, I'm back on my mission. I'm going back down.
What a much better movie that would have been. It would have been so cool to watch him interact with a truly compelling cult leader. Decide to usurp him, kill him, and then usurp him. That would have been
that was one of the alternate endings.
Yeah.
So the alternate endings for it, one of them was basically that he becomes one with the cult and whatnot. Yeah. The other one was, and then Francis Ford Coppola cut that one because he thought it was too dark of an ending. Like he wanted a more happy ending. And the other ending was that he was going to sacrifice himself, calling in the airstrike on the whole compound, basically, to take that out. And he didn't like that one ending.
Yeah.
And he went with this one because the audience enjoyed this one the best, I guess, or whatever. So, I don't know, man. I don't even have to ask myself would I recommend this, because I literally just recommended this to two people last night when we were talking.
Wow.
I was talking to them and I was like, hey, now they had seen it before, but they hadn't seen it in many years. And I was like, you should go back and watch it. It is such a good movie. And I was so impressed with it again. So this is definitely, one. I'm not going to say this is one of my favorite movies, because it's not one of my favorite movies, because like you point out, it is over 3 hours. So this is definitely a journey. Like I would sit down and rewatch, The Shining before I rewatch this movie, or I would sit down and rewatch Terminator before I rewatch this movie because of the fun of those movies. But this is not a better film, in my opinion, than those films.
Well, all right. Well, there you have it.
Yeah.
Well, that was our review. There you have it.
Yeah.
Jason and I disagree pretty seriously about this movie.
You might be surprised to find out we disagree about something. It's been a while because
no, I feel like we've always disagreed, but I feel like this is where we have really
hard disagree. Yeah. Right? Because I think, but I think we've done a lot of films that we both
even The Shining,
feel,
you loved The Shining.
Yeah,
but I was just like,
you thought it was.
I thought The Shining was great. It was just too long.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas this one, I'm just
it's funny that we've flipped pacing positions.
Yeah.
Right? Because like
pacing seems to be a much more important thing to me.
Yeah. Now all of a sudden you're the pacing guy and I'm the guy. Give me more. Give me more.
Yeah,
give me more.
Yeah.
So
that's what it's going to be like, I guess.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, sometimes we're going to agree.
Yeah.
We're going to think a movie's phenomenal. We're going to agree on a movie like Hereditary or something like that. And sometimes we're going to have Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we're going to have a Marvel movie that you fucking enjoy the shit out of. And I'm like, this is literal dog shit.
I'm fucking done talking about Marvel movies. I'm going to only talk about Marvel like during our Marvel show.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're both responsible, right? For pushing this wrong impression. That's all I'm doing. Yeah. I watch old movies with you and then I go home and watch Marvel movies. That is not
all
the
I've
case.
ever known you to do was watch old movies and Marvel movies. You haven't seen any film like Goodfellas. You haven't seen any Tarantino film. You haven't seen.
My favorite thing to do obviously not during COVID, but before COVID, my favorite thing to do was to go watch a movie every week. You know, go to the theater and watch whatever's coming out.
We would talk about film. That's where this podcast came from.
I know.
Us talking about films
arguing about films.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just so funny because like a lot of the comments that I read are just like, oh yeah, because it's not a Marvel movie. I'm like, dude, I like more than just Marvel movies.
I know, but and that's true. You do. We've talked about how you like Goodfellas and you like a lot of the films that are like the top notch
that we
films.
like. You know,
right?
Like that's how we started talking about.
And I think that this podcast has kind of developed into something more because originally the podcast was kind of like a cult film podcast. Like we were talking about Alien and we were talking about Terminator and action films and we've kind of developed into many. We've figured out that you haven't seen a lot of these old school classic top movies that I have seen and I've enjoyed throughout the years. And so we were going to delve into some of those as well. Yeah. And we're going to do, our occasional season ones like we do because we, for whatever reason, we enjoy doing seasonal ones like we just did with the Valentine's Day movies. Yeah. So, I mean...
Our themes are fucking bonkers, by the way, guys. Like, I don't want anybody to be offended about the themes that we do. We just kind of pick themes.
Yeah. Because
the first thing that goes into Jason's head is what we do.
Right. We pretty much do things off that. So, and then, as you know, before you know it, here we are going to be in the month of March, and March is known for St. Patrick's Day. So we're going to do some St. Patrick's Day themed films.
Okay, so we're doing Snatch next.
We're doing Snatch next. Now, you
is that St. Patrick's Day? I have no idea if that has anything to do with St. Patrick's Day.
Not St. Patrick's Day, technically, but there is thread that we'll talk about when we get there. Right. And our second St. Patrick's Day film will be Gangs of New York, right?
Yeah.
So, this is very much deep into the St. Patrick's Day. I mean, here's the thing, guys. Not every season is going to have movies about it like Halloween does or like Christmas does. So we just
happen to start it at a very specific time in the year.
Right, exactly.
Because I think we started in September.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like October.
Before you know it was October, right, and after that it was Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And so we've been able to do a lot of films that were seasonally appropriate. And we're not going to, and even though it's, still kind of shitty out and whatnot, we're not going to stay in winter deep films like we did for
And also,
January,
we're not always going to do themed ones, so don't expect that either. We're just being weird right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very early on in this podcast.
Right. Well, probably you'll probably as we round about to the year anniversary, we'll definitely start getting back to the things we did before. So I'm sure on the anniversary we'll do Terminator 2, and then we'll do Alien 2.
And that'll be really exciting because I can't wait.
Right.
Like Terminator 2 and Aliens are two movies that, because now I've seen the first one, so I'm like, oh, dope, I can't wait to...
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think giving this little bit of a break between them is kind of fun because it's just like how people did when they first saw the movies.
Yeah.
They saw the movie in 79 and then they didn't see the movie till the 80s or whatever. Yeah. We're only doing it a year, but it kind of gives you that little bit of a buffer zone. I thought that would be kind of fun to do. So you will be able to, in 2 weeks, catch us snatching things from your pockets live on the radio.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to steal things live from your pockets.
Horror has a face. You must make a friend of horror. Horror and terror are your friends. If they are not, they're your enemies to be feared.